welcome everybody to Faster Freedom Fighters and Interviews with Geniuses. I'm here with Grace Bell, and she is a facilitator of Byron Katie's The Work. I'll explain more about what I mean by that soon. And she's the writer of Grace Notes, which I love. You put out like one a day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they just keep
Yeah.
coming, and I'm always excited, and they're always great. But you can find those. And we'll get into a little bit more about what that is too as we're chatting at your website, which is workwithgrace.com. And just a little bit about why I have you on, because usually on Faster Freedom Fighters, we're talking about like how to live inside here, how to live in a physical body in a way that feels good. And so we wind up talking a lot about like how this thing works. And that's my field and what I'm interested in. But obviously, we're also talking a lot about people who are dealing with the frustrations of when it's not working that great, when there's chronic pain or mobility issues, or it's just even just plain old not happening the way you want in athletic competitions or as a dancer or anything like that. And so I'm a student of yours, and I'm a student of Byron Katie's work. We've worked together, you and I, for a few years now, and Byron Katie has gotten me through her work has gotten me through a lot in the last many years. So this is my spiritual practice for those of you who are watching and wondering why I'm introducing it. And it's basically a way I'm going to give you the floor to explain a little more what the work means, but it's a way of inquiring about one's own thoughts, particularly the thoughts that cause you suffering, in this way that, for my experience of it, is that they sort of instead of like thinking happy thoughts or power of positive thinking, instead it's like you really investigate the suffering thought until it almost like it just lets go of you. It comes undone, and there's this ease that comes in. And so you have been writing on Grace Notes lately about an issue of your own that you've been dealing with, and you also run a group, which you're in the middle of one right now, right, about questioning disease and
Thoughts about
suffering
pain. Yeah.
and thoughts
Yeah.
about pain. So I think you're the perfect person to talk about this. I'm so glad. I talk about it with my clients all the time. How do we deal with the suffering when our bodies are not so happy? So welcome. Thank you so much for talking to all of us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So to start, I think probably because we talk mostly about how human bodies work on the website, now I'm introducing the spiritual practice. So a lot of people aren't going to be familiar with Byron Katie's work. So can you describe what the work is a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, I love to. So happy to be here. Um, well, the first thing that I think of, um, I'll speak to what the work is, but part of the human body is the mind, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that I mean, our brain is in here, and then there's something going on with mental energy, and it seems that we have the consciousness goes beyond the body, but it's somehow connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're all walking around in this body, and I got very interested in this working with the mind because I could tell that so much came out of it was the way I was looking at my whole life. Um, my mind always had something to say, and that's what the work does, I think. So Byron Katie, kind of a funny name, but it's a woman who's in her 70s. A family tradition to have her name be Byron Katie, and everyone calls her Katie. And she's a person who had sort of a massive shift of consciousness when she was in her early 40s. And she talks about that as being severely depressed and kind of a shut in, very overweight, addicted to drugs, heavy smoker. And then all of a sudden, all that dropped away, and she perceived the world in a completely different way. It happened, kind of happened to her. And she speaks about that at that time she discovered the work, like it came to her. And basically, it's 4 questions. And it's very simple. I like how simple it is, but they're very profound questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we will do them a little today, but
Yeah.
they are, asking whether or not something's really true that you're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
how you react when you believe a thought, and then who you'd be without it. And then you do this thing where you find turnarounds, which is important too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just examining It's a way to inquire into the mind.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Um, and it is, I just, to put a point on it, because actually my first experience with Byron Katie, I was going through my divorce, and someone, when you're going through a divorce, people hand you self-help books constantly. And so somebody handed me um, Byron Katie's book, and I have it right here on my shelf. Loving What Is, her original book. She's written several.
Oh yeah.
And I remember I looked at the back, it's kind of in that place where I'm like, thanks for giving me another self-help book. And it said 4 questions that'll change your life. And I was kind of like, of course they will. I'm like,
Yeah.
great, like another quick fix, like American spirituality kind of bullshit thing. And obviously, I've become really invested in the work over the last several years, but I just want to put a point on how profound it is, and that it's a way of just slowing yourself down, and it can get very, very profound, particularly when you work with a group or with a facilitator, um, especially in the turnarounds when you turn around what you thought was true. And speaking to our work here on Fascia Freedom Fighters, you just in time for running your own group on inquiring about pain and sickness and death in the human body.
Yes.
You're dealing with
Yes.
a pretty major injury right now, and so you're
Yes.
through Grace Notes sharing with all of us your own
Yes.
process of inquiring. So if you want to
Yes.
speak a little bit about what you're going through right now.
Oh yeah. It's so fascinating. So yeah, here's this physical experience. So I have injured myself. I've pulled my hamstring on the right side, right off the pelvic bone,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's called. It's
Ischial
ischius something or other.
tuberosity. Yeah,
There you go. That
that's the
that
one.
thing.
Yeah.
And which is a hamstring avulsion, and of course you begin to learn all these things about something when it happens to you, right?
Right.
I'm sure people just like what you do and what you offer, never needed to learn about that before. And then
Mm-hmm.
I have books on my table from the library about the skeletal system, the pelvic area, because I'm sort of worked that way.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on here. And when I heard it, I heard it very badly, and I couldn't sit down, but I could walk. And so I thought nothing's broken. And I didn't realize that you can rip hamstrings. I didn't even know that was a possible
Mm.
injury. So I didn't go to the emergency room. I just sort of went home and rested, and it never stopped hurting. So finally, I went to the doctor. I went to the regular doctor, and they gave me pain medication, and that's all. And then told me to go see a physical therapist, which
Mm-hmm.
may or may not have been worse for it.
Sure.
you know, um, and the whole time I'm watching my own mind. Oh, here's this new piece of information. Oh, here somebody says this thing. Oh, now you need to go over here. And what I am so interested in this world that has all this amazing people and information, and there's helpers that can, deliver information to me, is also watching what's in the back of my mind as it comments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if he knows what he's talking about, or
Yeah.
oh, that sounds like a good plan. Oh, really? I have to do that? Oh, I have to get surgery?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, um, and so I love looking at when I have a fear response,
Mm-hmm.
a stressful response. Then I know to use the work. So now I have upcoming surgery, which kind of has to happen. It's not a life and death emergency, of course. Here I am sitting here, and but it sort of has to happen if I want the sharp pain to go away and be able to sit down all the
Yeah.
time. Very
Right.
funny, strange injury, and so that's going to come in a couple of weeks, and just watching and reading about that, and sometimes not thinking about it at all. But it's great to have the work for the
Mm-hmm.
stressful
Yeah.
thoughts. Fantastic.
And speaking of the stressful thoughts, I'm somebody who grew up with a lot of pain, so I'm familiar with living under the cloud of chronic pain. And to a lot of the people who are listening who are dealing with that right now, I'm sure they're thinking that this is a way of putting a positive, fresh spin on something that they hate. And it's really not about wallpapering over the bad thing or avoiding the bad feelings. Um, it's
Yeah.
So if you don't, I don't know if you would mind. It was one of your grace notes that you sent out in the last few weeks when this happened. If I just read a little excerpt from that,
Oh, great.
because
Yeah.
I feel like the work is one of those things that if people can't get a feel for it, they can't get a feel for it. So sorry to be talking so much, but this is a way for people to get a sense, and then we can kind of go into it a little bit. Um, so you had been in this note kind of talking about feeling really miserable about the pain and really scared about the possibility of surgery. So you write, how do you react when you believe that you're hurt and it's horrible? I believe life sucks. I ask God's source why it's set up like this. I have doubts and I'm very suspicious. I think I'm so vulnerable. I feel sorry for myself. I feel rage and despair. I try to figure out what happened. Um, and then you go into one of the questions. So ready. Who would you be without the thought that this is such a problem, without the thought that this is terrible, long-lasting, never-ending, that you can't get over this, without the thought, my pain feels sort of interesting. I notice that I'm breathing, I'm living, I'm not actually thinking about my pain 24/7 because sometimes I'm asleep. And turning the thought around, so this is the turnaround portion of the work you mentioned, I consider that this pain, this diagnosis, this condition, this situation, this event is not a problem. What if it's a solution? Um, well, and then you kind of go through some of the solutions you came to. I stand more often instead of sitting and slouching. My back is happier. I met really nice people at the physical therapy place and learned a bunch of stuff. I'm considering going swimming again for the first time in 20 years, and I used to swim competitively. How could I live this turnaround, trusting that something is inviting me to a new experience, a new life, and a new place? What if this situation is beckoning me to an alternative, a change in my mind, to surrender, relax, rest, wait, eat? Um, so it's just a micro glimpse into the work. And you
It's
also sent
really,
out something today, too.
yeah. I I have, because it's sort of rotating itself through my awareness a lot.
Right.
So I like what you're saying about, the that it's not a never has been focus on being positive and, oh, stop thinking your. Thoughts quick
Mm-hmm.
it's almost as if, let's take a look. The approach is very open to these negative thoughts. They're passionate, they're intense,
Mm-hmm.
they're saying something, calling to be really seen and looked at and heard, and I'm moving into them because I find the way the mind works, the way my thinking has worked, is it wants to get pass over things very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
move fast, and let's just get back to the good part where
Yeah.
we're just feeling okay,
Right.
you know. And it's a way to really go into what it is. Like, let's say this is, my leg will never ever be the same. That's probably true, but how do I um, could I be with that and have it be okay
Mm-hmm.
through this work, like just actually examining and investigating that. And
Yeah.
it's exciting. I love it. It's exciting.
Yeah. And as I was reading through the note you sent out today, and also this one just in preparing for the interview before you had sent the new one out, um, I was just thinking about my own experience, and I say this to clients who come to see me a lot because they say, wow, that must have been really terrible to grow up with chronic pain. It was. Like, it's not like it was great. Um, and it was particularly terrible in my late teens and early 20s when it kind of hit its apex. But I really do think back on it now, and it is the thing that has led me to work, a mission-led career life that I love more than almost anything else in my life. Um,
Yeah,
and that, and my jaw will never be the same. Like my jaw will never be a normal jaw. But like, so I have my wacky jaw, and I get to live this path, and it's because like at a certain point I had to go into the pain, you know, could not
Yeah.
be ignored
Yeah.
anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but just for people who are thinking about maybe turnarounds, it's like what you were saying, could this be leading me to something else? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the happy ending. And then my job will be perfect and I'll be happy every day of my life and I'll never feel pain again and I'll never worry again. You know, that's probably not going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
but some of the kind of agita is taken out of it if you think that there are these different possibilities for a thing.
Well, I love, it's this sort of a world of duality. I mean, there's opposites. We see the opposite in everything. There's, the good reason something's happening and the bad reason something's happening. Our mind sort of works like that. At least mine sure does. And sometimes it'll be just multiple possibilities. And to be able to see that that's what's happening and lean a little on the way that's not the emergency, let's protect, this is so bad, I need to go in, and build up forces against this thing that I don't like, but to say, is there anything over here, just leaning to the other side, sort of the counterintuitive approach, is what I like about the work and finding turnarounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very light, and it's just as true. It's not making up something airy fairy. It feels very solid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you had included a quote. I don't have it in front of me. Maybe you'll remember it, but it's from Byron Katie, where instead of like what I was just talking about, where it's like, and then maybe down the road, like maybe you're on a path that's useful to you through this thing. She actually took it to like, no, okay, like in the heart of feeling your worst, like you're about to throw up and everything feels terrible. Can you find that part
Yeah.
of you that's watching, unattached?
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
if you wanted to
Pretty
speak to
amazing.
that quote a little bit, like that sort of when you're in the storm, and it does just really
I
suck.
love that. Yeah. It's quite incredible. I have found that whenever I look at the most distressful, sort of shocking or intense moment of something I've been through, and I'm looking at that and using the work, using this inquiry, it's that there is a place that is watching that's untouched. It's almost like you get to see who is the who am I? I mean, there's all these things happening, and there's a body that's going on, and there's this I, that is watching.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was okay because you did make it through, because here you are now looking back at the tough experience. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a thread that is looking, and it can look back and say, oh, that was so horrible. And let's say you have a terrible accident or a
Mm-hmm.
big trauma, or things that we usually think of as difficult. I'm in the Philippines right now.
Yeah.
Something, but there's life, this thread of life, and the way it went is now it's now. And it's not saying I love everything that happened or I condone it, but it's just just watching even that simple piece that now I'm here, and whatever this I is did make it through,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm here to investigate is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
our thinking will just kind of like dust that part over, like, oh, that's something I really need to go back, and I'm so scared about the thing that just happened. You don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
It'll
Yeah.
sort of that part that you're actually sitting, and you can see even if in the moment of now you have pain,
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting to look deeply and feel that pain. And I know it feels like you don't have control of it all the time. Sometimes that's frightening, but it's to see if there's anything else going on besides only the pain, and just there's something, if there's a watcher that can watch this
Mm-hmm.
pain that's happening
Yeah.
that isn't really connected to it.
Yeah. And you're touching a little bit in on, like you were saying, present moment, and I feel like the work gets people into this kind of granular, like microsecond to microsecond experience of the present tense. And that so much of pain is past tense and future tense, projecting this will never get better. You know,
Yes.
remembering that that
Byron
accident was
Katie.
terrible.
Yes. Byron Katie has another wonderful, she has all these fun little quotes of ways she responds to. And one around pain is that pain is on its way out. And I remember thinking when I first read that, wow, I mean, when you're really feeling intense pain, um, the memory of that, you think that, it's not on its way out. Or when I'm, here I am about to go into surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know or I think I know that my pain's going to be stronger. I don't actually know that for sure.
Right.
Um, but it's all in the imagination. You don't really have the exact, experience. It's a very interesting thing. It's not happening right here in the moment often. And every single moment that I've ever had any pain, when I'm looking back at it or in the middle of some traumatic experience, um, there was this part of me, I guess that's what we were saying a moment ago, that is actually okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was on its way out. It's already in the past. The only way I can anticipate this surgery that's coming up
Mm-hmm.
is by trying to match it with previous experience.
Right.
It's the only way I think I know what's going to happen and how it's going to feel is based on past experience.
Right.
That's the only way. And the past cannot be what's going to be about to happen. So I really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So it slows you down from all those like solid feeling thoughts that this is going to be this in the future. You know, the surgery is going to be terrible, or I will always have this pain every day of my life, or all of those thoughts.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So
It
I
can
don't know
just
if
be
you, I know you
freeing
can't,
to,
sorry, what were you saying?
well, there's so much freedom in finding even just a tiny awareness in you don't have to have a huge giant shift in your whole perception of the world change about and how you think about pain. You can just have a little bit of a shift,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of a open, and I like thinking of it as if there's a little boat that's traveling around the planet in the middle of the giant ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and it only makes a half a degree change in the direction it's going,
Mm-hmm.
it will be in a completely other country by the
Yeah.
time it sails through the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So tiny little steps of just could I relax in this moment about this feeling of pain, or even think about relaxing, or just questioning and questioning some of the stressful beliefs that we think are absolutely true.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that, you lead a lot of great group classes, by telephone. You also do them in person. And I know, like I said, you're leading one right now on inquiring about pain and sickness and death. So I don't
Yes.
know if you can share any kind of themes that you tend to see come up in that group on a regular basis, stuff that people tend to struggle with around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I offer little assignments so that people kind of are thinking about the same thing, like what are all the difficult things when you think about where people have been hurt or you have been hurt in your
Mm-hmm.
life physically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's, the emotional work, but this is about physically. And so, of course, people have all kinds of memories that come to mind, in our lives. And then I have them just pick one and stay right in the middle of that situation and see what it is. If it just poured out of them, what do they want? What do they need in that moment? What should be happening instead, or what shouldn't be happening? And you get these really simple concepts, like, this shouldn't be happening. And you can feel the resistance. Then we all get on the phone together, and people will read what they came up with in their writing part of the homework, and then we'll do the work together on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very powerful. And we were just this past week doing very similar to what I just said. when you've been hurt, like this idea about being hurt. Something hurts. I have been hurt. And what is that? Seems like a funny question, right? But,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's just not assuming that we absolutely know. And when you do something like, this shouldn't be happening, as if you're in the middle of a situation or in the middle of experiencing pain, I could do that about my hamstring. This shouldn't be happening.
Mm-hmm.
I should have done that crazy move that made this tear.
Yeah.
And then you can go through the 4 questions, and we go pretty slowly because it takes some time to answer. So we can do them right now.
Yeah.
We can show them. So let's say you have a experience. This shouldn't be happening. I don't like this. The first question is it true? And sometimes the answer will be, well, of course it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
This
I really don't. Yeah.
really don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's always, with this one, there's a second question. Can you absolutely know that it's true? Mm-hmm. Just to check and just help you spend a little more time there, because sometimes the yes will be so fast, or mm-hmm. just seems really like it's true. It's always been true. Nobody likes this kind of thing to happen. No one wants to go to surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So can you absolutely know that it's true? And I love how only you get to answer. You're the authority. Mm-hmm. So if you have another yes, no problem.
Right.
That's the answer. Then the third question, how do you react when you believe the thought, this shouldn't be happening? Very interesting question. Mm. What happens? Because you see, if you really think something shouldn't be happening, and it is an argument with reality. Mm-hmm. You are against reality. And that is a hard place to be.
Right.
Yes. I hate this.
Yeah.
So you just see what happens, and what happens in the body. Mm-hmm. If the mind is thinking this shouldn't be happening. Very tight, very worried, lots of fear, or it could be just a little bit of fear, but you just notice that. And we spend time in there with other questions, just exploring that whenever we do groups together and when I'm working with people one-to-one. And then the fourth question, who would you be without the thought? What a strange thing. How could I not have the thought? I like imagining if I just came from another planet and, mm-hmm. They didn't have this conception there of the way I'm looking at things, that this is a bad thing that's happening. Just who would you be if you couldn't even have it? Or you were like a little child, or you were just somebody who didn't think that at the moment. Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Yeah.
If I didn't think the thought, this shouldn't be happening. It's kind of like being on a roller coaster ride. You just, you might relax on the way down.
Yeah.
It's just very different. It's a different, and it's subtle. It can be quite subtle, but profound. I found it to be very profound. Mm-hmm. So you see, who would I be if I couldn't even have the thought at this moment that I'm against this? And then, so there's just those 4 questions, but then there's always the turnaround. Mm-hmm. So flipping the whole thing, this should be happening. What's the opposite of your original concept? So this should be happening. And my example that you read a moment ago is there anything that comes out of this that is a benefit or interesting or an advantage? And I could see some, mm-hmm. with my injury. I'll be spending a lot of time on the couch, and I have a book proposal that they're waiting for me to finish. So I will finish it probably.
Right.
I won't be running around out there doing anything. It can be the tiniest little examples too, mm-hmm. small. It doesn't have to be. It's just showing it's not all bad.
Yeah.
You might be missing something. You might be missing something about what could come of this that's positive.
Yeah, or just remembering other times in your life that you also thought something shouldn't be happening. And in retrospect, you're like, oh, that definitely was what should have been happening. So, yeah, sometimes
That's a
that
great way
happens.
to do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very powerful. It's very powerful what the mind, you know, what, what the mind can do
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
question itself.
It's amazing. And going back to, the fact that you do this in groups a lot, you do it one-on-one as well. Um, but I know you've spoken in the past about, just what happens when you work in a group and the kind of like extra wind at your back, basically, that people get.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes. Because sometimes people will feel, I myself have had this sort of stumped, like in the middle of the question, wow, who would I be without the thought? And then as you begin to hear the other people answer
Yeah.
the question or imagine or, offer what's going through their mind, then it kind of kicks in something. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
You just have the support of other people, all interested in questioning their beliefs,
Hmm.
you know, questioning that they're against whatever reality is going on in reality. And it's very inspiring.
Hmm.
And they can also hear examples of other people's turnarounds and
Yeah.
think, wow. So it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opens little windows in the mind
Yeah.
about other possibilities that you hear coming out of somebody else's mouth.
Yes. Yes.
And I was going to say that working in groups is particularly helpful for chronic pain because chronic pain can be so lonely, but really all pain is lonely. Heartbreak can be lonely and financial
Yeah.
distress can feel lonely. So in general, I
Yes.
feel like the work, and in groups as well, is helpful to
It's
get out of
so
that.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it helped the more you do it, I think in for many ways, my own experience, the more I've done it with groups, yet the less lonely it becomes in my own mind.
Hmm.
That when it's sort of like you're in a, you know, wide open space when there you are with your own mind. There's
Hmm.
just it's sort of infinite. I mean,
Yeah.
consciousness is crazy, and if you have other voices, it kind of gives a little landing place
Right.
for that. And then the more work with groups and doing it that way, the more being in your own mind is not quite so alarming.
Hmm. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
You're not the only one
that's a
that's having all these
yeah,
stressful thoughts all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So for those who are listening and want to really, and I just want to emphasize that this work gets richer the more you do it, and the more you have a chance to actually, do your own stuff, your own
yes,
turnarounds. And but if you want a touchstone for those who are watching to kind of get a feel of somebody living the work, your website, workwithgrace.com, your Grace Notes, I think, are a great way to see somebody, whether it's hamstring injury or, and now, I really read them, or your son won't get out of the door to get to the bus on
right.
time, stress, which I can also relate to, although mine's smaller, but um,
Yes.
just like what does a life look like when you're actually aware of and inquiring about the thoughts that give you suffering and stress.
Yeah, yes.
So, and also, can people find the different groups? Because you lead groups on a variety of things. So, do you want to say what all those groups are and where people can find them?
Yeah, I do. Yes, so usually the teleclasses are listed on my website under the Work With Me part, but I'll rotate in. I do a 1 year one, which is
Yeah, I saw that. I was
I
very
just
tempted.
started doing it this last year. This came to me. People usually think that after an 8 week teleclass they'd like to continue. Well, maybe I should make a program that's a whole year, and
Right.
it just filled immediately.
Hmm.
So I thought, oh, it's very powerful to have the small group working together for the whole year and
Yeah.
changing topics every month. But we do the one on pain, sickness, and death. It's happening now, and there's one on food and eating.
Hmm.
A lot of people have such a struggling relationship. It feels like the relationship with food and eating and that's an old favorite for me from way back. I had an
Hmm.
eating disorder as
Yeah.
a teenager. So I like to work in that realm. Relationships, primary relationships. Sometimes people bring not a mate, but mother, father, parent, child, somebody close to them that they really feel is constantly irritating them.
Right.
Um, something like that. Um, that's 4. Then I do parenting.
Yeah, I saw that one's coming
Parenting.
up. I want to check that
Yes, haven't taught that one in a while. Just there's so many different topics. It's
out.
all about stressful beliefs,
Right.
you know, and sexuality is the
Hmm.
last one. That's sort of like once you're in that, maybe you're in a primary relationship or you're dating, and there's just so much anxiety or irritation for some people about all that's going on around attraction or not attraction,
Yeah.
attraction and repulsion, and all these little
Hmm.
thoughts. So it's fun for that. It's a good one. I just found a lot of richness out of my own work with that.
Yeah.
So yes, many topics, but all the central thing all the way back behind all of it is stress,
Hmm.
stressful beliefs, not having a good time here with your own what's going on in your own head,
Right.
and what you're thinking about your life and the
Hmm.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I know that we're always kind of skirting around the topic of the stressfulness of when we're in a body that's not, doing what we want it to be doing. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
you taking the time to have, a nice direct conversation with people about that today. Um,
Yeah. So welcome. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
Thank you for everything you do.
great pleasure.